Welcome everyone to tonight's program, Getting It Noticed and Sold, no matter what's going on in the market. And our presenter this evening is Marie Graham, who is the founder of the Refreshed Home and Orange Boom, and an award-winning design and listing prep specialist. Since 2008, nearly $750 million worth of her stage properties have sold in Westchester County. So thank you, Marie, for offering this workshop. I'm going to turn this over to you.
Well, thank you. It is always a pleasure, Giovanna. I thank you for the opportunity. And I just love the libraries, period. But you guys do such a great job of making things available for people. I could live at your library. So I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you everyone for being here tonight. I appreciate that. Let's get right into it. I'm going to ask, I wish we had more people on camera. As Giovanna said, that if you're on camera, you're not going to be recorded as part of the presentation. It just lets us see your face, see if you have questions, and lets you respond. But I'm going to ask the first thing I'm going to ask is, what have you heard about the current market? I'm going to give you three choices. So those of you who have your cameras on, put your hand up if you either think it's a seller's market, a buyer's market, or who knows. It depends. So show of hands, those who feel it's a seller's market, show of hands. Carol, I see your hand. I see Robin, I see your hand. Do we have other cameras, Giovanna? No, okay. We've got Diana entering. All right, so we've got at least two for seller's market. Anyone think it's a buyer's market? Can't tell from my end, all right. How about who knows or it depends? Okay, it's probably a little bit of the latter, the last one. There's a lot happening in the market, and these are some headlines that have come from different publications just this past week, and they range from the housing market is going to crash to the outlook for the new year. Buyers can rejoice, but there's a shock coming. I mean, these are all trade publications. So it's it's not that it's a rickety market, but the point is it's about your perspective. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Not everybody is going to sell right away. Obviously, if you're here, I assume you have some interest at some point in getting a property ready for sale. So the point we're going to make tonight is to talk about whatever happens, what you can do, how you can develop your own best plan and make your own best decisions, because things change. I mean, any agents in the group will know that, in 2019, a pool was pretty much an albatross on a property. 2020, not so much. So, I mean, that's just one example. But the point is that you want to be ready, and you want to just understand what's behind making good decisions. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. Yes, Robin, Giovanna filled you in a little bit. I own two companies, the Refreshed Home and Orange Boom. I call myself a design and listing prep consultant. I've been called a thought activist, which is okay for me. In 2007, I launched this company. My first career was in design, where I basically just bettered spaces in pretty much every price point in Westchester. I worked for Stickley and Ethan Allen, and I later managed each of those stores right here in Westchester. And I say that because I have a pretty wide range of a lot of properties, a lot of people, a lot of experiences, and people wanted more when I started the business. When I was working in full commission, I started in the 80s. It was a great time. People couldn't spend money fast enough. And it was a great time to work on full commission, but beyond the look or the result, the people that were drawn to me wanted more. They wanted to participate. They wanted to understand, they wanted to learn. They wanted to have a little bit more control of the process. So started the company to be about the people and the process, and fell into staging almost immediately, because that was when the real estate bubble crashed, and the choreography of people buying and selling, moving from one place to another, changed dramatically. Anyone who's been in this market for any period of time would remember that if, a number of years ago, if you were buying another property, of course, and that one became available first, of course you would move to that one because it was just a formality, selling the current property. Financing changed, everything changed, so people are staying in their properties, and that's how I kind of got started doing this. I believe that our spaces are sacred. They represent us, and they support us, they represent us, they strengthen us. I look at what I do, and what I'm going to try to do here tonight is to help guide you and lead you through the process. What we do, why we do it, is in ourselves. It's not because we see it in a magazine or anything like that. It really is very deep. 40 years of the people and space and stuff business, I know this for a fact. And I will promise you that when things make sense, that it's usually the right thing to do. When you understand, and you may not know the words, you may not be able to articulate it, so we're not going to get caught up in that tonight. But when something makes sense, you'll know that it's the right thing, and that you will choose well when you're pointed in the right direction. Okay, so tonight I want to first talk about what staging, quote unquote, is. I'm not a fan of the word. I'll share that with you. It was first coined in the 1970s. I actually was trained by the woman who holds the trademark on the word. She was a realtor in Seattle, Washington. The 1.0 version back then was totally visual. It was just what you see. It was very one-dimensional. And then the pendulum swung all the way on the other way, usually what was depending on what was going on in the economy. And it went from how much it cost and how fabulous it was to how inexpensively you could do things. And happily, the pendulum, I feel, has sort of come to the middle now, which is what pendulums do. And it's all of those things. But we really need to remember, this is why people push back. We need to remember that it is the people who are in the space and the process. It's not, nobody wants anything done to them. So when I first started doing this, I was really surprised that there was no definition. There was lots of reasons, sort of anecdotal reasons why people would want to stage their house. But there wasn't really any kind of guideline other than so people can see themselves living there. Okay, so I came up with my own definition. I'll share that with you. I believe staging is whatever you can do that will improve the market position of your property and ease your mind. Those are two parts of the equation that really, really should be, everyone deserves that, to have their mind eased and to have a property that's improved to the best way it can possibly be. It's a process, some would say a negotiation. You're determining what's needed, what's doable, and then setting up a plan to how to get it done. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about all of these things. We're going to talk about what it's like to see and feel things as a buyer does, why making a business decision is much better than making a personal decision based on personal feelings. You'll notice that I'll find gentler ways to say hard things, because sometimes it's an important part of it. Tonight, I want you to feel empowered. I want you to feel confident. I want you to have perspective. I want you to leave here having a finer eye at looking at things. I want you to understand how to make your own best decisions. Now, one thing, there's a few of you that may be planning like way, way, way in advance. And this is what I want to share with you. Getting ready, the process of being ready, is a very different animal from actually going live. All too often people say, well, we're going to sell and blah, 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 whatever it is, and we'll start, they'll back it in like 2 months ahead or whatever. There is absolutely no downside to if selling is on your mind at some point, there is absolutely no downside to getting ready, to being ready, because it gives you the most control. We've all seen how fast the market can flip. And the things that take time are the going through the attic, looking at the macaroni art and the old report cards and what books stay and so on and so forth. Even lining people up to do work. I mean, it's a terrible supply chain disruption, not only of product in our market, but also people. And it's very hard to line people up. It's very time consuming. So getting ready and being ready does not commit you to anything. Any realtors out there might kill me for saying this, but you generally can, if you have to, you can arrange to have paper signed and photos scheduled within 48 hours. But it takes a lot longer, especially if you've lived in your house for decades. I'm seeing a lot of that now. So just getting ready and being ready are not the same thing. And the other thing I'd really like you to remember tonight, there are no silly answers, or there's no silly questions. There's no dumb questions. Everyone has their own model of what's going to be right for them. What I would ask you to consider is that when you come to the point of figuring out what you can do, just make sure you do it the best you can, that you do the best you can from day one. All right, whatever you can do, and there's no judgment. Just do the best you can, because you will never have a sleepless night because of that. All right. All right. So, well, to get right to it, you may not like hearing this, especially those of you who are thinking that, oh, this is a seller's market and buyers will crawl through broken glass on their belly to throw lots of money your way. But the truth of it is, the most successful sellers remember what it's like to be a scared buyer. Buyers are scared to death. They're going to miss the right house, choose the wrong house, overpay, all those sorts of things. And it's hard because most sellers kind of get a little tingly when they hear multiple offers and bidding wars, and it's a very personal thing. You know, like Sally Field, they like me, they really like me. But here's the thing, is that you will never go wrong if you remember what it's like to be a scared buyer. In fact, I would go as far as to say that the buyer is king. I know a lot of people are not going to want to hear that, but regardless of what the market is, regardless of what the comps say, what your neighbor did 3 months ago, what your sister 2 towns over thinks, what the stager thinks, it is the people who hold the checkbook that determine worth. And worth is not what you think someone should pay for it. Worth is what they are willing to pay. So to shift it off of the house and that very sort of personal kind of statement, I want to tell you a little story. I'm a big follower of online auctions. And the reason is I'm just very fascinated by what people buy and what they don't buy, what they spend, how many people are into it. You know, what people do with discretionary income is very telling. So there's this one auction that I was following probably about 2 or 3 months ago. And there were 3 things that caught my interest. Not necessarily to buy them, but there were different reasons. One was this big honking wall unit, this entertainment system. And it was described as a monumental wall unit. And the reason that caught my attention was because I used to design and sell these things. We sold them for many thousands of dollars. They were big and they had all sorts of equipment in them and all that. So there was one of those that was up. The next thing that caught my attention was a potato chip box of pink plastic flamingos on a stick. You know, the lawn ornaments that people would put out. I didn't have any reason, but I kind of like to think of myself as someone who has a box of pink plastic flamingos hanging around, because you never know. So that caught my attention. And then there was a set of Pyrex nesting bowls. They had Pyrex, they were the mixing bowls, different colors, 4 bowls that fit within one another. And the reason that caught my attention was because my Nana had bowls like that. And I used to make chocolate chip cookies with my Nana. So, and oatmeal too, but more chocolate chip. But I felt very nostalgic with those bowls. So I was very curious as to how they would work out. So I'm going to show you now screenshots from those three things of how it ends up, because these are people that determine what certain things were worth. So the monumental wall unit, one bid, $1. I know it cost thousands, wherever they bought it. The next bid, 14 people wanted pink plastic flamingos, $46. I really wish I had gotten in on that one, but I didn't. The third thing, the mixing bowls, 35 bids for $94 total for bowls that were probably 40 or 50 years old. Do you think any of these people were buying wood, plastic, or glass? They weren't. They were buying what those things do. And that's what you want to remember with your house. People, yes, they're buying X amount of bedrooms, X amount of bathrooms, so on and so forth, but they want to buy more. They want more from that process. And my experience has been with big. This was actually the last workshop I did. It was about when we first started COVID, listing photos became enormously important. They were always important, but they became enormously important. And the thinking, the mindset was that big was everything. And you know, big is visual. It's just one dimensional. You need to be more, you don't need to be, but if you want to sell quickly and well, be more than visual. Challenge yourself to think beyond, like that little Star Trek thing. Did I remember to tell you that you're going to have fun tonight, or at least smile a little? I like goofy slides. What can I tell you? So being better than big is better. Here's the truth. And if there's any agents out there in the audience listening, you're going to be shaking your head. Yep. We think people buy from up here. They don't. People buy, can you see my heart? People buy from their heart. The head kicks in after the heart has fallen, and that is regardless of whatever the market conditions are. They will buy from their heart. The brain will kick in after the heart has fallen. So another reason why we need to think of buyers as king, buyers cannot or will not, quote, use their imagination. Back several decades ago, it was all the rage to get a fixer-upper and build sweat equity and make it your own and bring it around and all that sort of thing. That bloom has fallen off the rose for quite some time. I have sometimes long-time homeowners who look at would-be buyers disdainfully, they think of them disdainfully, that nobody wants to work or so on and so forth. And you know, because they don't want them, you know, to do the things that the sellers themselves don't want to do. They want the buyers to do it. And they're busy working to make a lot of money to pay the price that somebody wants for a house that is done well. But the truth is that, again, buyers, we don't trust our judgment. There are more people in this world that are left-handed. There are more people that are blue-eyed than those that can trust what's immediately in front of them. And trust me when I tell you this, even if somebody can trust their instinct, they're not going to. This is the biggest purchase probably in their lifetime, and they're not going to trust their instinct. They want to see it. So do not think that they're going to use their imagination, because I'm sorry, they're not. Oh, there we go again. Oops, sorry, wrong button. There we go. All right. Respect is a two-way street. You want to be respected with high numbers, quality offers, people who wipe their feet in the house, you know, all that sort of stuff. Guess what? So do the buyers. The buyers want to come to a house and feel that somebody took the time to do the little things. And that could be as simple as, and you're going to laugh, wiping the bugs out of the front light fixture. That could be as important as, you know, just fresh towels in the bathroom, a nicely made bed. One of the things that blows people's minds, and people love it, it totally unsuspected, When you're doing a closet, if you put your clothes in color order, whatever you've got, so it starts from light to dark, it will blow people's minds and they will project that everything in your house has been taken care of to that degree. So people want to be respected. We all want to be respected. We all want to be wooed. Here's the thing, though, that you want to remember. It's not just the buyers, especially if it's a starter home or even an up move. It's almost guaranteed. Realtors, are you with me? Do I see a nodding here? Remember, the parents, the kids, the colleagues or friends, somebody in that buyer circle is going to get their ear and they're going to have something to say about it. So you want to be careful. Parents especially, they like to look for the tiny, tiny little things because they're parents and they think they can find stuff that no one else can. So taking care of the little things means everything. And they also, nobody knows how to estimate what things cost. So whatever you can do, when you do the best you can, you take care of it yourself, you set yourself up for a much better way to go. I'm going to look at the chat box here. Okay, good. Okay. Whoops. All right, so we'll get that out. All right. Giovanna, any questions or anything like that I should know?
There are no questions on my end
Okay,
right now,
everybody doing
unless they
okay?
go directly to you. Yeah.
Okay, I don't see many hands, but let me just take a look here.
Here's
Everybody-
one
Ah,
from Max Annie Izzy. So even in this real estate market, you would recommend fixing up details rather than as is.
yes, indeed. If you have that choice, yes. And I'm so glad you've asked that question because I'm going to be touching on that and exactly how to do that. All right, so, okay. The bottom line is to find your best answer, you want to answer the question, you want to be clear in your mind what you're willing to do to get what you want. Your equation is not going to be the same as anybody else's, but for you to sell quickly, sell well, be a happy camper and live happily ever after, be very clear what you want and what you're willing to do to get to it. Because again, that's what's going to make it work for you. All right. So in my experience, buyers decide, there's 3 numbers that factor into a buyer's decision or how buyers make decisions. The first is 5 seconds. And why is that? Anybody have a guess? Okay. It's because of this. Everybody does everything on their phone today. And when your house goes live, the scared buyers who have all sorts of home finder apps on their phone will ping. They will pick it up, they will look at it, and you've got 5 seconds to engage them because that's just how people are doing things. They look at everything on their phone these days. I love this picture on the far right that has it was taken by a gondolier in Venice. These people are in freaking Venice in a canals and nobody's looking around. They're all on their phones. So we really depend upon our phones. And you want to remember, these are 3-inch screens for the most part that people are looking at. So the listing photos will have to be impactful because that is, believe it or not, that's your chance. That is your chance. The next minute or the next number is 1 minute. If listing photos did the trick, people will, they're driving to your property and the street number comes in focus, they see the sign and the clock starts and you have that 1 minute. It's like a first date, it's like a job interview, or more to what we've gone through lately, first day of school. Everybody wants to start well. So you really need to take the care because it tells other people that you care and that you care, that they feel cared for and prepared. The third number I have is 30 days. Again, these are the numbers that I recommend buyers consider. It's how I make my recommendations. I have an asterisk at 30 days because some agents would feel, depending on the market, that it could be less. It could be 14 days. But here's the reality. That first period, when your listing goes live, especially if it's never been on the internet or if it's been a while since it's been on the internet, you are given this amazing gift. You are doing this gift, you are given this gift where you can do no wrong. Your listing is new and fresh and shiny, and everybody wants to be there and see it first. After that 30 days, give or take, the only way to stay relevant, meaning top of people's minds, is a price change. And you really don't want to go there. To Max's question about being prepared and doing things on and on, that's called the expectation of giving people money off once they're at the, once we're negotiating, is called a buyer's allowance. And you never want to do that. If you can avoid it at all possible cost, avoid it. Because what you're doing is you're training people to find other things they don't like and that they'll want to negotiate with you on. The best way to move forward is to bring the house to the best it can possibly be and price it accordingly. Because here's the thing, buyers are 2 clicks away from something like this. This is a recent screenshot from an out-of-town property. Don't anyone try to be figuring out where this is. It's a lovely house, but on one screenshot, you can see that 2 months ago, it was dropped $75,000. That's a lot of money. And that was 2 months ago, and it's still live. And it's been on Zillow for 119 days at this point. Almost 5,000 people have looked at it, and 133 saved it. All right, I'm a nervous buyer. I'm looking at this. I'm thinking, first of all, it's overpriced. Secondly, what's wrong with this house that so many people have seen it? Now, to be fair, 4,923 people did not look at this site, look at this particular, click on this link. But it wasn't one person looking at it 4,923 times. A lot of people looked at this. Nobody bought it, at least as the regular buyer can tell. So they're going to say, well, somebody else found something wrong with it, so I'm not going to bother. Or it's overpriced, I'm not going to bother. And they're gone, they're done. So that is your digital footprint. And you need to remember that people can easily find this stuff out. You'll never have that first 30 days again. So make the most of it, price it accordingly. The best looking properties attract the most attention. Does everybody think that that's a fair statement? The best looking properties attract the most attention. Yeah, it pretty much is. But here's the thing, best looking is subjective and it changes. Look at all these things that we thought were fabulous back in the day. Big was big. Look at that cell phone, that Maxwell smartphone, that hair that destroyed the ozone layer. The car is still pretty cool, but those draperies, I made a lot of money selling draperies like that years ago. But the truth is conspicuous consumption has been out of style for some time. And if you're selling your house and you've got things that are pedigreed to the hilt and fussy and personal to the hilt, first of all, buyers are going to have a hard time seeing past that and undoing it, especially if it's not their taste, heaven forbid. But they're also going to, that it's there when you're selling the house. It tells them in a roundabout way that you're kind of expecting to be reimbursed for that stuff. No, you got to let it go. This is a game you want to play to win. It's a big game, but we like to win, right? It's really important for you as sellers to be more aware of market trends and buyers' expectations. That doesn't mean that you do everything that you hear or see. It means that you look at it, you work with your agent, and yes, you always work with an agent. And you do what you can and you just price it accordingly. The market will tell you if you're right or wrong, but this is the way to succeed because there's so much information out there. And buyers, a lot of people don't realize it. Buyers will engage their own agent to represent them. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost them anything. They have the knowledge as well. So play to win. And yes, it's in honor of Monday night being Monday Night Football. All right, so here's what the market typically rewards. And Max, I think this will answer some of your questions. A few years ago, I created this infographic. Now, don't worry about reading all the fine print. I'm going to send it to Giovanna after tonight, and she's going to forward it to you, so you'll have your own copy. But I started, anyone who's had any sort of psychology courses will recognize this sort of channels a guy named Abraham Maslow. He created something called the hierarchy of needs, I want to say in the 50s. He was a psychologist, and his feeling was that we each have our own innate high point, the best that we can possibly ever be. And he surmised that the way to get that isn't to just go for it. It's a thoughtful progression where you organically build your skill set to ascend and become that best person that you can possibly be. For example, if you want to be president of the United States, you don't just start kissing babies and shaking hands. You have to have relationships. Even at the most basic, you're not going to think about that if you're not sure how to pay Con Ed, or the roof has a leak. So, those are sort of weird acknowledgements, or not acknowledgements, examples, but the point is that you start with the basics and work your way up. And I realized about 7, 8, 9 years ago, something like that, that's how I always worked in houses. I just didn't realize it until that. I didn't put them together. So at the beginning, you depersonalize, and we've all heard that word, and it's really hard to hear it and not think, well, yeah, you really think my kids are ugly, my dog is fat, and I've got bad taste. It's not that. Your stuff, our stuff, tells the story of who we are and why we're selling. Buyers like that information because they will use it against you. It'll also distract buyers. And from a very real point is that when you're taking a photograph, and it's going to be read for the most part on a small screen, a lot of things muddy up a picture. And it doesn't read crisp and clean. It reads just fussy and dark, and it's all sorts of things. So depersonalizing a space just means that you're taking some of yourself out of it. It doesn't mean that it's white on white, death by tundra room. It needs some personality, but it's if all people see is the people who live there, it's gonna be a tough slog of it. The next step up that you want to look at really hard is repairing and replacing. The reason for this is a couple-fold. First of all, we mentioned what the COVID and the supply chain disruption has done to getting product and people to do things in your house. You don't want to do it. Your buyers sure don't want to go through 60 or 90 days and then get in the house and then have to, arrange for the boiler to be fixed or the, a window to be replaced or, whatever the case is. Repair and replace whatever you can, because also buyers overestimate. They don't know what things cost. It doesn't mean that the house has to be perfect. And when I work as in 2 steps, and my first step is a consult. And during the course of consults, I always help people to find what is the next best. A perfect example is a house that's had wall-to-wall carpet for many years. Chances are, if there's a wood floor underneath, chances are they've won the flooring lottery because the wood floor has been protected. No one's going to say, sometimes people will go, oh, well, just pull up a corner in the closet. Why would you do that? What does it tell people? It tells them that the corner of the closet looks good. So let's say the wood floors need some work. Taking up the carpet and letting buyers see the wood floor removes the uncertainty. And then the next best is you get a written estimate on letterhead, something dated from a local person on what it is to fix the floor. So buyers come in, they say, oh, the floors need to be redone. That's $30,000. And your agent will go, no, here's an estimate that was from last week. It's, whatever it is, $8,500. The point is, you want to repair and replace what you can and be prepared with information because that's key. You definitely want to have that done before anything else. Following that is getting it to code. Now, I know enough about code that if I'm looking at something that's a little weird, I'll know to say, this is a little weird, you got to look at it. Code varies from town to town. Now, you may live in your house 20 years, 30 years. Maybe there was, when you bought it, there was always, that deck was always there. Or that freestanding toilet, shall we say, has been in the basement or in the closet or something like that. You didn't think anything of it. Nobody gave you a problem when you were buying. But what's happened in the last, I don't know, 5-10 years is that towns are enforcing the code, and your property, when it gets appraised, let's say you get an accepted offer, it gets to be inspected and gets appraised, you have to meet code. So if people, 2 buyers before you bought that house and they put in the bathroom or the deck or whatever the heck it was, and they didn't get the permit and they didn't legalize it, that is going to be on you if you want to sell. And that, my friends, is just the way that it is. It's the ball stops in your court. It's a mangled metaphor, but it is going to be your responsibility. My point being is that if you have things like that in your house, if you're not, and this is one of the things your agent will discuss with you, but if there are things in your house that need to be addressed, sometimes it could be as simple as a handrail going down the basement or something like that, but they will discuss it with you. They will know how to look at the property card and what was there. They know how to do these things, but you want to get it to code, because why on earth would we think about doing anything else pretty or fun, la, 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 if you've got to dedicate major dollars to getting it to code? Lighten it up is kind of the depersonalizing, but you just really want to keep it light, because especially now in terms of the pandemic and just what people want in a space, light and bright, you just can't oversell it enough. So light and bright, fewer things, contrast of color. Those of you who have throw pillows on the sofa, whose pattern kind of contrasts with the pattern on the sofa and kind of goes with the pattern on the rug, that's not going to work. Lighten it up visually. Solid colors are the best way to go. I was actually on a Zoom realtor. It was continuing ed. I don't continue anything. I just take the classes. But I was on a class last week, and it was on about dealing in hot markets. And I was surprised that the Zoom instructions said, don't wear plaid or flowers or anything loud or busy, because it didn't read well when people screens. I thought that was very interesting. So lighten it up visually. One good example is on a bed covering. If you have a queen size bed, queen size mattress top measures 60 by 80. And by the time all is said and done, that's probably about 75 or 80 square feet of a color or a pattern. Make it a color and make it light, because if it's closer to your face, the whole room seems to breathe better. It just sort of stretches everything out. If it's dark or heavy or busy and intense, then everything ends on the top of the bed and people are not seeing the space. So, all right, clean, pristine, moving ready, gold standard. If kids or anybody can put their head on the pillow the first night, that is gold. Clean, pristine, and move-in ready will make people happy. And unless you've got a really unusual, challenging floor plan, sometimes an old house where you've had things added on, things taken away, if it's an unexpected floor plan, sometimes you do need to bring in some things to sort of guide people and help them understand. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But as far as bringing in updates, or I should say doing updates, sometimes you always want to take this on with the advice of your agent, because you're looking at return on investment. Kitchens and baths, for example, are huge returns on investments. But here's the thing, you think, well, my kitchen is old. If I spend X amount of dollars on it, I'll get 2 times X amount of dollars. And it doesn't really work that way. You want to be very careful. And again, weighing the time that it's going to take you, the almost irresistible urge to put your own stamp on things. And it's not always exactly, what people want. There's no shame in bringing a product to market that is priced accordingly. So that's what I would say. But I'll tell you an example of 2 condos that I did recently. Both one in White, actually they're both in White Plains. I think about it. They were one was a 1-bedroom, one was a 2-bedroom. They were both original owners, so they had lived in there over 30 years, probably closer to 35. The walls were off-white, the ceiling was off-white, the trim was off-white, the doors were off-white. The carpeting was unusual. They were both on cement slabs. They were constructed both ground level. And in one, the bathroom was really horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous. And in a 1-bedroom, the kitchen and the bath is a lot. So we did updates in both of them. It was one of the first times in a long time I can remember we gutted the bathroom. And in both cases, we brought up the floors. We put LVT, which stands for luxury vinyl tile, which doesn't look like linoleum. I can answer questions on that later if you want, but we did that. We painted everything, a few new fixtures. The bottom line is both had multiple offers the first week, both sold way over ask, and one was a cash offer. So those sellers definitely got their money's worth. The 1-bedroom where we did the bathroom over, I think he put in about 25,000 into the apartment, which was about 10% of what he thought he was going to sell it for, and he sold it for 50 more than he thought he was going to sell it for. So there you go. So you'll get this infographic tonight or tomorrow from Giovanna. And if you have any questions on it, you can certainly give me a call. Again, I'm going to remind you, whatever you can do, it's all about doing the best you can from the beginning. I want to talk about the reason that you want to woo these buyers. Getting a good number isn't everything. It's a lot, but you want buyers who are going to give you a substantial deposit. You want to get the serious buyers. They can give you a substantial deposit and that can get through the appraisal and the mortgage process. So in a hot market where, let's say a house gets appraised, let's say you list a house at $625. You get bid up to $675 or maybe even $700. Well, what happens if the house only appraises at $600? That means that the bank is only going to give the buyer a mortgage for up to $600,000, and they're going to have to come up with a more substantial, payment to make that, or they're just going to lose it. So you always want to get in your offers the most amount of deposit, and you want to make sure it's as condition-free as possible. You want to get someone who can put down X amount and not have it be contingent on a sale or something like that. So it's really key that buyers be attracted to the property, seriously so. This is important. Buyers who bond with a property, it's very important, because let's say you need some contingencies. You need a certain move out date. Let's say you have to legalize things. You got an oil tank, you got a bathroom, whatever the case is. These things are not going to happen overnight. Or let's say it's a co-op and you have to have that extra layer of board approval. These are all things that take time and are going to try the patience of buyers. That is, unless they really love your place. Things will change. Interest rates will go up. Buyers, if that happens, buyers may not be able to afford as much house as possible. So you need to have them, again, be really bonded, really connected, having them really, really want your property. Oops, sorry. Okay. Again, I'm going to say this because we all look at the shows on TV, the magazine articles, I'm going to tell you, there's absolutely no shame or regret when you figure out whatever the best is that you can do and do it. You will sleep well at night. And if you don't believe me, ask your agent. Details matter, and you can do so much for not a lot of money. And again, this was my why when I first started doing this. What I told you before about putting clothes in the closet in color order. I had a house, it was actually, there's a condo in Ossining that went on the market in the middle of a blizzard in February one year. And they got a full price offer, the first person that walked in the door. She alphabetized her canned goods. I didn't suggest it. I noticed it when I was at the house. She was very pregnant with their second child, and maybe it was hormones, maybe it was just who she was, I don't know. But these details matter, and it's not so much about the pedigree, it's about the feeling of the space. And we're going to talk about that and how that can go into listing photos. I want to talk, this word style comes up, and I do say that I style photos, and that sounds like that could be very off-putting. It can sound very intimidating. I'm very attracted though to this definition, and that's why I wanted to share this with you. If you look at what this says, this is right off Merriam-Webster's page online, that styling is, all it is it's just to arrange in a particular way. You make it in a specific form for a particular reason. You combine complementary elements. That's all. It doesn't say that you paid $700 for 12,000 thread sheets, right? It just means that you set it up to look a certain way, you styled it, that there was intent, and it was purposeful. And that's a really important thing to remember as you go through and get your house ready for sale. All right, to talk about the listing photos for a bit. This was a great photo. I can claim only a little credit for it. Again, you want to remember when you're looking at your space, most listing photos are seen on 3-inch phone screens. Here's a rule. You can't not see color and light. You can't not see color and light. It's a double negative for a reason. I want to make sure you remember that. We are drawn to it. It's probably a prehistoric survival skill. You want to use that to work to your advantage. So let's say you have, well, I'll talk about this space. This is an all white kitchen, as you can see. I love this picture because she did so much. So much of this she already had in place. She had a lot more stuff in place. Actually, the shelf underneath the cabinet on the left was full of stuff. The kitchen counter had all sorts of decorative candlesticks and bowls and all that sort of stuff. But the Fiesta ware on the far right, that was hers as well. And what I said to her is contrast color. So the eye, because we're looking at color, we find ourselves going around the whole room. We engage in the whole picture. We even are drawn to that room in back. Ooh, what's back there? Oh, there's a little lamp on the cabinet. She's got the spider plant in front of the window. There's visual texture. So here's the thing with listing photos. Our MLS currently gives everything that's listed on there 36 opportunities. In other words, there's 36 slots when your listing goes live. Some of them can be pictures, some of them will be floor plans, maybe pictures of things in town, the exterior of your property. They may not even use all of them. Sometimes properties don't have 36 shots that they can use, but you have that at the ready. That's something for you to discuss the wisdom of how to proceed with your agent. But let's look at this under the electron microscope. If you give the eye things to look at and engage, when that person is on their phone and they're flipping through the pictures, and instead of like a half of a second, maybe it's 3/4 of a second, maybe it's even 2 seconds, and they're going, oh, I wonder what's in back of there. By the time you get to the end of the pictures, cumulatively, people have looked at your pictures for a lot longer than they've looked at other people's pictures, and they're feeling a bond. And again, I know it's looking at it under the electron microscope, but trust me, these things, when you have visual texture, visual depth, when you have contrast, these are the things that make listing photos interesting. Again, even before the pandemic, showing function was more important. Function equals value in the eye of the buyers, but value is in the eye of the beholder. So here's some ways to typically show value immediately in your listing photos. That is the same pie. Would we have any takers on the ones on the left? Guessing not. Color. Use color to your advantage. White walls often are the kiss of death because we don't see the white walls. Our eyes stop at the, the other colors. But I'm coming around. If there's punctuation in the room, then white walls we can kind of live with. But this is an example of why white walls do nothing. Gravity takes its toll in as much as everything's on the floor and everything is a box growing out of the wall. But your eye kind of stops when you look at the entertainment center on the left or the chair, and the sofa just feels very heavy. There's not really anything else to engage you. So, if you can avoid white walls, do so. If not, then you add color. You want to draw the eye in to the pictures and around. See what I did there? Eye drawing. Sorry. This is a picture I absolutely love. This was a house in Chappaqua. And again, full disclosure, the fireplace was turquoise when I got there. They had a private decorator, a number of years earlier, do the space, and they painted the wall turquoise. And the agent said, "Let's paint the fireplace." I said, "Please do not." So the furniture was all hers. What I did is I added art above the sofa. You can see there's little touches of color in there. It also balances the weight of the furniture. The room is not just bottom heavy. I added a turquoise pillow on one of the leopard chairs, the far one. And then if you look beyond, you go, oh, there's pillows on that sectional, and there's that recliner that's in the turquoise. There's depth, there's dimension there. It wasn't a center hall colonial, but when you walked in and turned your head 90 degrees, that's the front of the house that you saw. And that's the family room that ran the entire depth of the house that you see beyond that. This was a condo in Briarcliff over on North State Road. And the folks were big art collectors. And everything was gray. Every surface was painted gray. The ceiling was gray. The walls were gray. And they had just big bouncy art all over the place. And they had a very dense patterned rug and some heavy upholstery. They also, this is all their furniture. I brought in the red pillows. We positioned the furniture so that it was a lighter look. The chairs that you see out on the back patio there, the back deck, the yellow chairs, those were chairs I told the agent to buy. She bought them on auction. She asked my opinion. I said, absolutely buy them. The green plant, when you want to understand with listing photos, is often they're taken from the threshold of a room. And that's to acclimate buyers as to what you're going to see. So you always want to do something interesting at the farthest diagonal back corner. So having that plant back there in the far corner adds punctuation. It adds life. It adds energy. I'm kind of done with the phrase pop of color, but let's go with punctuation. But this was all white, but we carried through the red, and you got to see, and then you go, oh yeah, there's that picture in the back hallway there, and oh, there's the office there with some art over there. Again, you're creating dimension. This was I want to say $100,000 co-op in Bronxville. And again, it was an original owner. There was a lot of deferred maintenance. We painted the walls. The reason that we put a color on the wall, the reason you always want to try to put color on the wall if you can, is that if it's all the same color, you don't see the trim. You don't see the delineation from the floor to the walls and all of that. You don't see detail on the door. These were just panel doors, but if you've got 6 panel doors, something like that, those things become much more apparent. And this was a garden apartment, 2 stories. This is what you saw coming up the stairs. You saw light, and you saw the art on the near wall, a little bit of red, a little bit of life and energy. And then you kind of peeked into the kitchen and went, oh, what's there? So again, it's I don't want to beat a dead horse, so to speak, but create dimension, create depth, create excitement. Think of what buyers are going to see when they see it for the first time and what the photographer's going to do. I want to speak to you about capitalizing on outside space. Now, usually outside space really is not considered listing square footage. An outside space could be a deck, could be a patio, could be a screened in porch, a front porch, any of those sorts of things. There are rules. If I was at a house just this past week, it was 4 seasons, a 4-season porch. It had heat, and it seemed that it would be counted as square footage. I don't know, not my call. But the point is that especially this time of year, if you want to extend the season, we live in the Northeast, May through end of August, September, that's kind of like the big season. You can show value when you can extend the season and show purpose beyond just square footage or acreage or anything like that. And it doesn't have to be expensive. And it doesn't have to be fancy. This picture I found online, but it was reminiscent of a picture that I saw a number of years ago. I look at a lot of listings online, kind of a hobby, just as, yeah, I got to see what's out there. So whatever you're looking at, once you see a couple of them, they all kind of look the same. And this is not just true of houses. It's true of clothes. It's true of chocolate brownies. If you take a bite of a chocolate brownie, you haven't had one in a while, it is the best chocolate brownie in the whole world. After the third bite, your taste buds are kind of numb. It's like, you know. So this particular day, I was looking at listings that were in the like $1.5, $2.5 million price range up in northern Westchester. And they were all lovely. They were stunning. They had the marble entry, the dual staircase. They had the patio, the pool, all the sort of things. They had crystal chandeliers. They were all lovely, lovely. The last picture of one listing was something very similar to this. Someone had gotten into the pool and took a picture of the dog swimming to them. It was actually a black lab in their picture with a ball in its mouth. That, if I had been a buyer, that would have been the very first picture that I saw, or the very first house that I saw, because that would be the kind of house that I'd want. I'd want to have a fun house. I'd want to have a house where people really lived and enjoyed, not so much to impress other people, but to make me happy. And I'm a dog person. So it doesn't have to be fancy. Here's some more examples. Upper left-hand corner. I was in somebody's basement and they had all these canned tomatoes. I went, "Are those yours?" And they said, "Yes." I said, "You bring 2 of them up, put them on the counter in the kitchen, because that's somebody's dream." A lot of times people who are moving, especially in northern Westchester, any property with a yard, it's like a Green Acres dream for them, that, you know, they can do these things, they can have a garden, they can. So that gave a good feeling. If you'll notice, this picture was taken in my car. I scored a jar of tomato sauce. People like to give me food. I don't know why, but anyhow, a dedicated exercise area right here. This was big even before COVID, but show a space that has purpose. These people had all of these things. The room had a lot of other things. Clear it out, make it a dedicated space. As I mentioned too, I'm a dog person. Anything you can do to show something is pet friendly could win you big. The picture underneath down below is a house I did in Croton a few years ago. If you are familiar with Croton, you know that lacrosse is one of their big sports. And this household had 4 males who all played lacrosse. Can you imagine what their mudroom looked like? So what we did, we tied the aspirational lacrosse playing family with neat and order, because that's what people want. And, you know, when somebody dreams, this particular house would have been an up move for someone. They're dreaming about order. So show them order. We painted everything white. She spent maybe $30 for baskets. And even you see how the lacrosse sticks are even angled at the same line. Precision, attention to detail. These things matter. The lower right-hand corner, this was a Cape house in Hastings. And Hastings is not known for their lacrosse team. Hastings has a good scholastic program, and most people who are drawn to that, the arts, culture, books, music, all of that sort of thing is very big. So what we did is we got plain molding, nailed it onto the wall, put some books. This was like a really tiny little alcove in the kids' rooms. Put some of their books on the shelves. I think it was probably, I don't know, $30 for the wood. Got them, they had the chairs, and we just made it a little reading nook. Very appealing to people who are moving in to 10706 or looking to move into 10706. Above that, the downstairs room, and that is a downstairs room, the bright pillows, the bright lights, it's not a basement, it's a living space. There's a difference. If something looks basement-y, it's not going to have the kind of value, it's not going to have the kind of appeal that if it's a living space where people can really go and hang out and they can have their friends over and so on and so forth. And those little baby feet, you know, sometimes that's somebody else's dream too. And I do this thing, I have this like picture frame. It looks like a window frame with like 6 panes. I got it, I think TJ Maxx or something, and it had string on it with little paper clips that you're supposed to like use as a bulletin board. What I did is I bought a couple of those and I used baby socks. I have neighbors who have babies who have miscellaneous socks, and I clip them and I put that in the laundry room. And because that's kind of very real, you know, on a couple of levels. So these are things that you can do. Here are some photos that the agents took that, or I should say the photographers took. I want to point out again how you can make the most of your space. This top upper left was a garage that it was in a lakeside community, one of the Salems. And they were summer bungalows at one point, but you don't get a lot of money for summer bungalows. You get more money from a year-round house. So the garage was small and we needed to show a car in the garage, but we also wanted to point to the lifestyle. So it was a win-win to take the bicycles out, because there was a bicycle trail nearby, take the bicycles out, show a little bit of a lifestyle. We used yellow mums on either side to kind of highlight and call definition to the space. They didn't open up as they should have, which I will always regret, but it's still a good picture. The the middle left, the lacrosse net in the yard. My husband is from Yorktown, and if you know anything about Yorktown, they invented the game of lacrosse. They think they did. No, it's a very, very big pole. So what we did is we borrowed a lacrosse goal. It's a kid's pop-up goal. We put it in the backyard. You can see there's not much going on in the backyard. It was in the late fall, like October or something like that. What that did, it showed that the yard was level and that kids could play sports and practice and all that sort of stuff. Cost nothing. They got it from their neighbor. Picture under that. This was a house, Old Post Road, Albany Post Road in the Crotonville area of Ossining. And you are looking straight out to the Hudson River. These are marshes here. And the guy had the binoculars. You just put it on. I mean, that's very aspirational. You just put the binoculars on the rail. You tell a story right there. Above the middle picture, this was a house we did in T-Town, and they had lake rights. They had their own dock. This was their dock. We spent a lot of time getting the house updated. It had been out of date. We put some money into it. It was an extended process. The day of the pictures arrived. It was April 1st. Can you guess what happened that day? Yes, you're right. It snowed. So of course I'm like, but it is what it is. The photographer took this picture. I did not. I didn't even set it up. I saw it when the listing went live. I thought it was brilliant. Second week of April. Everybody's jonesing. It's been a long winter. Everybody's jonesing for some relief, some vision of summer. If you look at this dock, you'll see there's no footprints. You'll see just the snow melting around the edges, and there's no footprints there. He saw it. This is another reason why you have agents who are good. They hire great photographers. This agent saw it and he took this picture and, just thinking about summer, and that extends the season. This one here, you use color to lead people to the bridge. They weren't wondering, is this the neighbors? These were the same yellow mums that we used in the other picture. So it was an outbuilding, so that tied it in. A fire pit is an awesome way to add interest. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. This particular house in the bottom right, they had this clearing in this bench just sitting there doing nothing. They had that. So I asked her if her landscaper could gather up some rocks and just make a fire pit. So they did. We threw a couple pillows on there. it was a destination. It became a photograph. It became a destination. If I was shooting it this time of year, I'd throw a blanket over it and maybe put a tray with a couple of mugs of hot chocolate or something on it. You know, these are just, again, easy things to do. Oh, and this last upper left picture, this was a house in Purchase. And again, all credit to the photographer. It had a man-made waterfall, and it was early March, very early March. So there was no foliage out. And I saw, as I came out of the back of the house and I looked up the waterfall, I put these chairs on the top of the hill, and they were in lime green so that they would stand out. They were plastic Christmas tree shop, I don't know, $8, something like that. They were in lime green, so they stood out. The photographer took the other approach and photographed it from the back looking down. And I thought that was brilliant. It just, you know, people sit up there and that's what they do. Here's the thing I want you to remember about good design. You have it in you. This was when I was talking before about this whole, you know, sometimes people call me, say it has an anthropologist twist. Can't say that word. But it goes back to what we want in ourselves, why we choose what we choose. It doesn't matter almost our zip code or our price point. We're so much more similar than we are dissimilar. And the things that we like, the things that we trust, the things that we do are kind of universal. Here's a secret. Good design is intuitive. You should not have to work really hard about it. Do not make your listing tortured or fussy or anything like that. Make it real. Agents in the office, in the audience, you know, if you're showing a house and your client, the buyer, says to you, oh, this house is obviously staged, but that's not a good thing. That's not a compliment. People don't want to feel that something is being put over on them, but they want their hearts to be touched. So good design will make sense, and it will truly serve the people who use it. It's really that simple. Steve Jobs had it right. Ironic that he got his start with fonts, about how fonts look, but it's true. Good design, it's not about how it looks, it's how it works and how it feels. So again, you want to do the best you can, whatever that is, from day one. And I thank you. Okay, I'm expecting questions.
There are a few questions that came up. Going back around the 7:40 mark, how do you find the code in your town?
That's usually something, that's actually the best question. I mean, that's the best question for the agent. I believe that each town or each municipality has its own rules, but they're not really like that different, but you should be aware of that. As I said before, I know if I see a toilet in a closet, my first question is going to be, is that illegal? Is that a legal bathroom? And sellers often will say, oh yeah, it was here when I bought it. That's the best question for your agent.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. And then
it comes down to being safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. I mean, for the most part.
How do you determine what dollar amount to put into your home? How far up the pyramid chart to go?
Well, what I do when I do a consult is I work in a very interactive and collaborative way. And I start at what is ideal. You know, we talk about what the ideal is, and then the client will just, you know, give me some feedback. Sometimes we have to, if it's an extended project, we need to collect numbers. We need to get estimates. And then you have a very real discussion with your agent about what you can expect to sell it for. If you do this, or what if you don't, you know, what the downside, what the upside is. I mean, I've heard figures, percentages of what people should expect to spend in terms of getting something ready for sale. And I don't know that how anybody can really come up with an absolute number. My feeling is you kind of in your gut know where you need to be. And you want to, if you can understand what the buyers are going to see and how they're going to feel and what their reaction is going to be. If it makes sense to you, then you'll come to your own decision. I mean, the gentleman who spent $25,000 to redo the condo had a lot of reservations, but this was also the, I think, 6th or 7th house that I've done for he and his family, his extended family, not his own property. And because it was a modest space. But this is, and one thing you can do, and I'm going to send this to Giovanna as well. We have an amazing multiple listing system service. It's called HGAR. It stands for Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors. And if you look at it, there's on the menu bar, there's a line that says resources. And if you drop it down, it says market data. And most people aren't, I'm not even able to analyze some of it. I can analyze a good amount of it, but it gives you really an objective of year to year, quarter to quarter, the last month, all sorts of things. It's an amazing amount of information for our area, by county, by quarter, by month. It's just great. And my point is that when I spoke with this particular client about the condos, the data showed that the condo market was really pretty much flat because people were not choosing. There were less, the prior 2 quarters, there were less new listings, less sales, not really any appreciable increase of selling price, and the days on market were not getting any shorter either. So he really kind of had to do something to get the property noticed. And we talked about that, and the co-op market in particular, we touched on that tonight as well. You might not think of staging as something to deal with co-ops, but personally I love working with the co-ops because, well, you don't have, they're modest spaces and you don't have to do a lot to make a huge difference. And that's probably another topic altogether. But I guess what I would say to that is just in your gut, what you want to spend, what you can spend. And if you can't or don't want to, that's okay. As again, I'm going to come back to, as long as you price it accordingly, because 2 things need to be in alignment. For you to sell quickly and well, it's price and condition that support each other. It's usually wise, and Max, this is also to your point of doing things, it's usually wiser to improve the condition as much as you can, because if you don't have condition to talk about, all you got to talk about is price. And that generally doesn't work out so well for sellers.
Okay. Any other questions? I suggested if anyone would like to unmute, they can also unmute and ask a question. I'll ask a question about color because, color preferences can be subjective, even though we know certain colors are more uplifting, like bright colors, yellow and orange. Are there any colors you should stay away from that just would be take away from the beauty of the home, or people wouldn't be able to see the design elements because the color is so distracting?
Well, distracting color is yeah, that's a good starting point. We hear the neutrals, we hear gray, people are like, and we're done with gray. Gray is popular for a reason. We keep going to the grays because it's soothing. It's warm. It's like coming home to a hug. Our world is so noisy. And there's so much activity going on, and we want a place of serenity. We want a peaceful space, and the gray tones do a nice job, but there's just as many grays as there are blues, reds, oranges, and so on and so forth. I like the use of color. The important thing is scale. I tend to look at the biggest spaces being more neutral, meaning walls and floors, followed by beds or upholstery. And if you notice on some of the pictures, I use some very vibrant colors throughout the rest of the room, but they were in small doses. It's hard to think about it in a home, a property, but think about your closet. It's very different if you put on, a red suit as opposed to a red scarf. You want to use the right proportion. I would caution, never use loud, screechy, or acid kind of yellow, green kind of colors in a bathroom, especially if it's a place where someone's going to put their makeup on. You'll have some very unusual results. It's just not flattering. But anything, I don't want to say middle of the road because that sounds really boring, but I'm a fan of the Benjamin Moore historic colors, which are nuanced colors. They're saturated and they're nuanced, meaning they have chops, they have presence, but they're not hard or harsh to look at. When you paint costs what it costs to make. And the less expensive the paint, the less quality and quantity of pigment is in it. So here's an example. I'm not a fan of Behr paint. I know Home Depot sells it and everybody loves Home Depot. I'm not a fan of the Behr paint, the regular line, because it's cheap and the colors are very sheer and harsh for the most part. However, they have the Marquee line, which I love, which are more settled in colors, and they actually do cover in one coat. And then they just came out with something else. I forget what it's called. I think it's called Legacy or Prime or something else. I don't know, but it's one step up from Marquee. I haven't used it yet, but neutral but engaging, because people are afraid of color. We love color, but we're afraid of it.
Thank you.
That was kind of a long answer.
No, but it's interesting because, I had a family member who their first apartment, the walls were like this deep red, which, I've heard is not a good color for different reasons, but the whole room, like all very bright, like another room was lime. And I believe when they were prepared to sell it, they had to tone down the colors because they were just too garish.
You bring up a good point. Decorating is whatever you like, whatever floats your boat. Good, life is too short. Be happy with what's around you. There's that's absolutely fine. Being more neutral for selling, it is a business decision. That doesn't mean it has to be one shade. As a matter of fact, if anybody has a vacant home or is going to be listing a vacant home, please, for the love of God, do not do one color. Because if you have one color throughout and there's no furniture as markers, nobody knows what they're looking at. At least do different colors. One of the ways that I deal with vacant spaces, I have part of my business, I have a prop rental, I call it Props to Go. And I bring in, that was the, let me flip it back here. Whoops, there we go. Where did that one go? Well, actually, in most of the pictures that I showed you, I brought in some of these things. Like, for example, this apartment was emptied. In the kitchen, I brought in red canisters. You can't see them in this picture. These were my art pieces. I brought in the lamp, the little table, anything you can do to engage the eye, and create, again, create dimension. That's what we did here. They had the art, we brought in other things. Listing photos, if the main spaces flow, like you mentioned, red into lime green, and maybe there was a yellow in there, that's very jarring. And what happens is, besides it being jarring, it doesn't photograph well, it chops up a space. So you can have an enormous space. And if your colors were very, very bouncy and did flow, the space would read as smaller and therefore of less value. So I like a color scheme that has an analogous feel to it, that flows. When I'm doing a whole house, I'll typically, it doesn't mean every room is the same color, but if I'm doing a color palette for a whole house, I'll use, like, say, the color we use in the kitchen, we'll use in the upstairs bathroom and one of the bedrooms, something like that. Spread them out a bit. In other words, as you walk through, when you're going down the hall and you go into one room, what are you going to see? And then if you're standing in one room and you can see another room from that, what are you going to see? Those are the things that you need to consider. But I love that you unintentionally mentioned they had the red and the deep colors. And then it was very loud, but they had to tone it down when you sell because things change.
Yes, and taste is arbitrary in some cases, right? It's all subjective. So, all right. Well, go ahead.
What I just wanted to say is, and I think I forgot to say this at the beginning, is that part of my thank you to all of you for being here tonight is that if you have any questions, maybe you didn't want to ask, or maybe you were shy, or just, maybe have some very specific questions. As a thank you to all of the folks who register, if you want to send me an email, if you want to give me a call, I don't know who any of you are. I don't know how to reach you because, as you know, you registered through the library. And if you've ever attended any library events, you know that they're not selling opportunities. So I'm not here to sell anything, but if you have any questions, you know how to find me. And as I said, I'm going to send you the information that I mentioned, the PDF and a couple of other things. I'll send that to Giovanna tonight. But if you have any questions, anything you want to discuss with me, or send me a few pictures, ask me your opinion, I'd be happy to jump in and do so. Thanks.
Wow, that'd be great. That'd be great. Well, if there are no other questions, then we'll conclude the program. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you for Marie Graham for always being so gracious with your time and presenting these workshops, which I think now is the time, right? Now is when Westchester's hotter than it's ever been before. So we appreciate your recommendations.
Well,
thank you for the topic. It's such an interesting topic. I don't think any other library has thought of it. So thank you.
You're welcome.
well, I appreciate you all being here. It's I'm hoping to change the world one house at a time, and I'm deputizing all of you to to carry this message and to tell people, don't have them lose out because they look at what they see on TV and say, oh, I can't do that. I don't like that. So I guess I can't do anything. There's so much that you can do. And you just, as long as you know what it is, and that's what I do. That's what I help people do. Untangle the complicated relationship of the space and the stuff and all of that. So I'm glad you all were here tonight, and thank you again to Giovanna.
So do we
for
have
the
to
opportunity.
organize? Do we have to organize our closed closets now?
You know what? If you woke up tomorrow morning and you did that, every time you opened your closet for the next week, you would smile. I promise.
It's therapeutic.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Giovanna.
You're welcome.
Thanks everybody for
Robin.
being here
Thank
tonight.
you.
Good night.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody.